All right, man. Good Wednesday morning to everybody.
A good, solid, and what I'm hearing, slight breeze. It's October 30th, the year. It's 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. You listen to the Crushing Iron podcast. This is episode 809.
Yep. Yeah, like I said, it's always kind of windy up here, but when they put the wind emoji by the day, we're screwed.
Emoji. It is, man. It's been it's been all kind of crazy. When it's too bad it'll be like that tomorrow night. And I forgot to ask you, before we went live today, what's the trick or treat situation up there?
Nothing.
Zero.
It's more of a summer home place. We had what do you call that?
I'm sure you're excited about that, I would imagine.
I don't know. When is that tomorrow?
It's tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know. I might put something out there. I don't know. We had a ding-dong dash the other night, though, that scared the shit out of me. Yeah. It was
Little did they know you're probably wide awake.
I was in the shower, and it was raining, and I thought it was thunder at first. I put the robe on, with my newly manicured. What's it called? Manogrammed. Whatever. You know what I'm saying. I went out there soaking wet. I look out and there's somebody, and then we looked on Facebook and the whole community had, did you get tired? Did somebody just pound on your door? And the whole place blew up and everybody started sharing pictures. And I heard they got the young guys that were out there having fun got apprehended the next day.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. That is just the kind of, diligent search for justice we need in this world.
Well, yeah. I mean, they just
finding the kids
the shit
that
out of me,
causing a trouble.
Nobody's really around here, and then all of a sudden you get loud pounding at 9:00 at night or something. It's kind of jarring.
Yeah, got to keep the riffraff out. Hayden, you may or may not know this, but Hayden is going to dress up as Matthew Tkachuk, hockey player, Florida Panthers, full on. Post Stanley Cup celebration outfit. So he's got the jersey, pants. He's going to wear a ski goggles, Stanley Cup hat, and he's going to carry around a Welch's bottle of grape juice to be champagne with bubbles coming out the top.
Wow!
And I'm actually going to dress up with him this year.
You're gonna?
Not really. I'm just wearing a shirt that says "to chuck around and find out."
Clever.
Yeah, thank you. And that's it.
Is that young guy?
What's that?
Is that young hockey player that he loves, that he got the puck from?
That's Connor Bedard, plays for the Blackhawks.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Tkachuk's a pretty scrappy player for the Panthers. But yeah, that's what he wants to be. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. That'll have to work. But yeah, so it was, again, as we talked about on Friday, huge weekend in the sport. The KONA Ironman World Championships had the men there this year. And it always gets a lot more. You get a lot more fanfare in KONA. You always will, for a lot of reasons. But that's also something that I thought was interesting to talk about. We talk about the winner, obviously, Patrick Lange. We had a bunch of athletes there. And a big shout out to our coaches, CJ Parker and Chuck, who all had awesome days. But yeah, it's always a fun weekend to watch. And we had as we kind of talked about on Friday, there were no late dropouts on Friday, late Friday. You did have plenty of dropouts during the race, but you didn't have them the lead up. It was a pretty, they say it every year, it's a stacked, most stacked field ever. I would say it wasn't front end stacked, but it was definitely incredibly deep. And obviously, Patrick Lange took the win. A lot to break down, and we kind of talked about it on Friday. And we did the preview, is just how different the race is for the professionals, and compared to age groupers. And age groupers kind of race their own race, but professionals, you got guys Laidlow. He was biking. I think he ended up biking so hard because he thought he had to get away from Blummenfelt. Had no idea Blummenfelt was basically vomiting water for 17 hours, it seemed like. And then you had Ditlev, who probably thought he needed to hold on to Laidlow. Everybody's playing these games like the people that thought they had to worry about the most. And then you got the guy, 39 years old, right? Which again, I think is like something that we can't touch on enough today. Is Lange is his third Ironman world champion. He's a 3-time Ironman world champion. Arguably, if the race had not been in Nice last year, he probably would have won it last year with the field that they had. And you look at a guy like that at 39, running as fast as he does, playing, and we also talked on Friday that you can't, in the past they would always say you can't lose the race. Excuse me, you can't win the race in the swim, but you can lose it. I think he won the race in the swim. When I didn't get to see the start of the race, but when I checked my tracker and I saw that he was in the front pack, like fourth out of the water, I didn't necessarily think game over, because I did some comments to a few friends. Like when I saw Laidlow come off like 8 minutes ahead, I was like, I don't know that this is catchable. But to see him come out in the front group, that set him up for the best day possible. So yeah, a lot to break down. You got Lange coming in first. You got Magnus Ditlev, which looked like one of the most grittier performances of the day, hanging it out to second. Because when you saw him coming in a T2, he looked like he was roasted. He looked totally done. So to see him kind of like manage his way through is incredible. And then you had Rudy von Berg, American, coming his way in from the back. But again, we say it all the time. We've done a million podcasts about it. Bike for show, run for dough. And it was just awesome. It was an awesome display of one, running ability, two, incredible, I think, again, at his age of 39, when everyone's talking about the young guns of the sport taking over and owning everything. And, the Norwegians are going to crush everyone for the next 5 years. And that's been not happening. Laidlow, blew himself up. Ditlev hasn't cracked the code. And then you got Lange, at 39, who just switched coaches. His long-time coach, Bjorn Giesman, he parted ways with him in August, needing something different. It obviously worked. But yeah, lots to unpack, but super pumped to see him finish. And then we'll also want to touch on this. The call of the week, I think. Cam Wurf at was it 7th?
Yeah.
At 41 years old to come in. I think he, outside of Lange, I think his performance was one of the most incredible performances of the day. Just with how much he does in sport, and it's incredible. And I just think there's so much to learn from race strategy and patience and the whole thing. I thought it was a really fascinating race to watch from start to finish.
Yeah, a couple things there. It's kind of funny. I mean, I agree, obviously, that bike for show, run for dough, but it's kind of funny that biking for show is a 4:06. Yeah,
right. Right.
It's, but obviously everything's relative, but still these guys are just insane. Blummenfelt has the worst day of all times, and he's at 8:29, so I just and then, yeah, Cam Wurf, I just read a thing here and there, and I just had a feeling that he would be solid. And then, but my biggest disappointment is that I don't think I brought up Matt Hanson, who, I honestly think he might be the most underrated Ironman triathlete. That guy is.
I'm not going to say you're wrong. I mean,
he's just always right there. Yeah, he wins during the year all the time, and it's just like,
yeah. Lake Placid, he was great. I think in running from. I mean, he's never coming off the bike in the top 10 at big races. He just never is. He's not the swimmer. He's not the cyclist he needs to be. But he always seems to, and again, he's always done really, really well at races like Texas, right? Because he's so hot. You always have these guys going so hard on the bike that he just runs his way from 25th or whatever he was, I think, coming off the bike to run, I think, what was it? He had the second fastest marathon of the day. And I mean, again, at 39 years old, it's incredible to me, and I think such a lesson for age groupers, right? One, not just the lesson in, bike for show, run for dough, but how the guys, again, at that age, so at 39 in professional years, that's like 56, 60 in age group years, right? Like you tend to start fading, right? If you want to look at all the past champions, short course, it's all, they're all faster. But then even again, as you look at how old Jan Frodeno was in his late 30s, early 40s, by the time he decided to call it quits. David Magnum, he also had a decent day at 36 years old. But you look at how well these guys and how hard they work and how they can continue to get better. And it's always and again, it always comes down to the run. And I don't think we can overstate this enough in how, yes, it comes down to the run, but for Lange to swim front pack and have the race that he did and hang in and around, the guys on the bike, he is the one. And I love the post race photo of him, like the next day of him with like the chessboard. That's to me, it's like one of the all-time greatest photos. It's like him leaning with his hat on. He's like moving a chess piece. And I was like, that is legendary stuff right there, because that's exactly what he did. He outsmarted and outplayed everybody. He knew that while, they could, again, like you said, it's insane to think that, you don't have a front pack bike when you're biking, just under 410, because you got you had, what was it, 7 or 8 guys under 404. But he knew, and he bet on himself, that you guys can play the cat and mouse game. You guys can play against each other, which I think they would probably readily admit. I think I saw where Blummenfelt, again, it's kind of like, before we go too far forward, I was very wrong in that there was a giant pack coming out of the water together. I did not think they would stay together, but they drilled it. I almost called the swim course record being broken. I think it was broken. But I didn't say it again.
Age grouper broke the record.
Age group, yeah. I mean, it's super fast conditions, and for swim wise, Laidlow was drilling it. But I think it was. Again, it's really, really interesting to me to see these guys play against each other, who they assume are going to be the winners. Like Blummenfelt, I would imagine, and I think he may have even admitted this in like a post race interview. I haven't watched the whole thing in its entirety, but from what I've read, he kind of said like, I think some of my issues probably came up by trying to hold on and ride with Ditlev for as long as I did. And he was basically, because this is the thing that I think we also have to understand and realize as we look at how the sport is saying it's evolving by the amount of fluid and the amount of carbohydrates that these guys are taking in. You got people saying they're taking like over 140 an hour. Well, there's a huge difference in doing that when you're in like zone 1 and zone 2, right? You're in your fat max zone, or you're in high zone 2, like your aerobic threshold. There's a huge difference in doing that, and then in that kind of zone and effort, heart rate. And then there's a huge difference. And if you're taking in that many carbohydrates, and you got to stay in like high zone 3, zone 4 for, we're talking like 3 to 10 minutes. There's no way to take in that kind of, 1, fluid, and 2, calories and carbohydrates. And so I think that was a huge piece of what Blummenfelt was just trying to hang out, and just how they were trying to. Laidlow thought he had to get away. Ditlev tried to put in time to Blummenfelt. Blummenfelt thought he had to hang on to Ditlev, and he got Lange just sitting back being like, I swam with probably the guys I need to swim with. I'll do a little bit of work in the pack. I don't need to do a ton, but there's not a single person that is racing today. There's not a single person that can run with him in Ironman racing. Outside of like the only 2 that I could think of top of mind would be like Trevor Foley with his the marathon split he put at Lake Placid, and then Hanson because he's the second one of the day. But they were so far back on the bike that he's like, all I got to do is do my thing and let you young bucks go after each other, surge after surge after surge after surge, dig yourself a hole. I'll let you guys duke it out, and I'll just step in and swipe it away. And that's what he did. Because I even think he put on the brakes a little bit the last 10K. Because he knew, he crushed everyone. Demolished everyone. I think I read where he, like the first 10K, he was averaging in like the high 5s and blew through, what was it? I think I ended up texting, I think Brian Snell after I saw Lange running through, like, I think he passed like 9 people in the first like 5K. Like, that's just insane. And you got to think, like, for those guys to see somebody running that fast so early and already passing you, that you just got to feel demoralized. And it was a master class from Lange in race day execution, patience, strategy, obviously fitness, right? And just putting together the absolutely perfect day. And to his credit too, like he probably doesn't get enough, right? He's won the 2 Ironman championships before. Everybody, you know, is all about Jan and all of his stuff, and rightfully so. And then he just gets over. I mean, we overlooked him. You know, I kind of overlooked him, even though he's there all the time, and he's a big race dude, and he always shows up. He was second last year in Nice. He's got 3 titles. I mean, depending on how long he holds this on, he could go down as one of the all-time greats. And it was amazing to watch him run through, you know, a field that everybody thought were the new young guns that were going to take the sport by storm.
Yeah, man, it is amazing watching that guy, and like the way you put it, where he ran by so many guys so early, and you know he's the best runner, and he's just saying, like, even if he's, you know, pushing it a little harder than he wants, he's just like putting a message down there, and that's got to be, because I always think about that you know, you're out there, and even though he blew him away, I mean, the whole field is so close, really, in the big scope. You know, it's not like an age grouper wins by 2 hours; they're winning by like 8-10 minutes or whatever. So it's always kind of on out there, and how these guys do that, and like the level of like Cadillac engine they must have, you know, to be able to push it 80% and still be going, you know, 100 miles an hour or whatever. You know, just having such an engine and understanding that, and obviously he did. I mean, I think he ran a 5:58 overall pace. Does that sound right? I mean, because I noticed he was kind of slowing down. I think he probably finished a little strong, and he got it under the 6 minute, which is just mind-boggling. But yeah, and I don't know, man. It's like you look at a guy like
2:37. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, he ended up averaging a 5:58.
Yeah,
a 5:58.
Yeah,
it's just it's unreal. And I think also, like, for races like this, when you look at like going back and trying to figure out, you know, it again, because it also comes down to choices, right? And I think that's also something that's a great lesson for age groupers, right? And one, you know, we can talk about the strategy and the execution and betting on yourself and not getting caught up, right, in the race. And really the egos, right, and who you think is going to win. Because I think that's really like one of the biggest areas that age groupers could focus on is, you know, I remember this has been years and years and years ago, but I was talking to another coach about like the top level Ironman age group athletes, and, you know, I'm not talking like the ones that win the race, like top 10%, right, which is attainable for anyone with hard work and consistency, I think. And he just said, you know, Ironman, the Ironman distance is just so different from 70.3. You can make so many mistakes in the 70.3 and just be fast, and you're gonna get to the line so much quicker because of your speed. You can make mistakes, but it's not going to cost you as much because you're not out there that long. But on an Ironman, mistakes are so costly, and really all you need to do is make the least amount of mistakes, because everyone is going to make so many of them that they're going to take themselves out of the race. And I think that's what happened here. I think so many people took themselves out of this race with just decision making, and not just decision making like during the day, but like just choices they made probably in the lead up. Like, you know, you look at Lange, who basically just kind of went dark for the last, since August. I don't think he raced at all. And I know Laidlow did T100. And this is another thing that I think is going to kind of change the landscape of racing, is how many races are offered now. You know, back when, you know, you and I got into the sport and started this, you know, 9 years ago, people would do like max 2 Ironman a year, maybe, and then like 1 or 2 70.3s, and that's it, right? The sport was basically, you know, on hiatus from early October, like from Lake Placid to Kona. It was kind of on hold because everyone was doing these like huge long training camps. All they were doing was putting in the volume. They were putting in the miles. Their only focus was Kona or the Ironman World Championship. And now you've got, you had a T100 race in Vegas the weekend before. You had, you know, Ibiza before that. I mean, you have so many races. People are trying to make all this money. But I can't help but think that a lot of these guys were just roasted. They were just roasted before. I mean, they were just absolutely smashed going into this race. And it's so interesting to me how like these ebbs and flows of the cycles of what age groupers get attracted to, as well, and how easy we are to crown like the next great athlete. Like Sam Long has an early season, incredible early start to season, and all of a sudden we're crowning him one of the top, 2 or 3 best athletes on the globe, and he kind of peters out a little bit in the bigger races toward the end of the year, and then same thing. Trevor Foley had a wreck, but then you look at Gustav Eden wins Kona, Blummenfelt wins a gold medal, and then he wins St. George, and all of a sudden the Norwegians are going to take the Ironman world by storm, and it's going to be like taking candy from a baby. And Gustav was a DNF, and Christian, ran a slower marathon than probably 20% of the age groupers after having a bad day. And you might argue he left his race in Frankfurt when he went and demolished everything the week or two after the Olympics, and then putting the volume in. It's just, I think to me, it also just it reiterates the fact, which you and I know as coaches, and we talk about frequently with our own athletes on the podcast, is that there's so many different ways to be successful for every athlete, but there's also so many unknowns. And, in a race like Kona, where yes, it's hotter and then the competition is so deep, and it's everyone's big race, there's enormous amounts of pressure, whether it's to win or to please sponsors. You never know what's going to happen on race day, ever. And that's why these huge races like this are so unpredictable, because you don't have any idea what's going to happen. And these are professionals who have every T crossed, every I dotted, hours and thousands of dollars in the wind tunnel. And you'd think that they've got their nutrition and their hydration, dialed in perfectly. And you would think that every race could go perfectly, yet it doesn't. Because all that stuff is kind of, accessory type stuff, but it's the human body is just so incredibly unpredictable that even professionals have unpredictable days. And that's also, I think, a huge lesson and a reminder for age groupers who can get so down on themselves and struggle so much with having one bad race, right? Which age groupers tend to race. Most age groupers tend to race so much less than pros that don't really have that experience, right? Each race is just has so much more weight to it. But it's just long course racing is so hard. It's so hard on your body, and it's so hard to get right. And also, like, in comes racing, you just never know what's going to happen. So like racing your own race, again, I think is the biggest lesson to take from that. And just, the bike's important, but it's only as important as your ability to run. And about 9 guys figured that out in the first 5K when they saw Linga blow by them like they were standing still.
Yeah, man. You talk about pro triathletes, and I try to think back to when we did start, and back, 10, 12, 15 years ago, the nature of Ironman, I think, has been, let's make these guys pros in the true sense, where that's what they do. I think back in the day, it was sort of like the football player that was a mail carrier in the off season. They were kind of almost forced. A lot of these guys probably had jobs, and they may still have jobs, a lot of them. But I think the more time that you have, sometimes the more time you try to fill. And I wonder if, like, it's like, all right, if you're a pro triathlete and you've got all day, are you just trying to jam too much in there? I wonder sometimes if this isn't mental and physical exhaustion, and maybe it kind of ebbs and flows. And some of these, guys like Patrick Lange and Hanson, and these guys have been around for a while, and Keenley, the guys that used to, that if they understand that they actually need, rest, they don't have to be, doing Pilates and core work and running 2 or 3 hours, more's not always better. You know what I'm saying? So I wonder sometimes if once you get yourself into the pro mindset and you got all this time, it's like, I really need to keep doing shit or whatever. And if that doesn't like catch up with you sometimes, and, I think back to sort of when I was doing my corporate gig, that was when I was racing best. And I just was forced not to I had to kind of find my time, get my training in and be effective and whatever. I know it's apples to oranges, but I'm just saying, I wonder sometimes if this, we talk about mental exhaustion and how I know earlier in my career, I had that mental bandwidth where I could, I just could get through a lot more pain or whatever it is. And now it's kind of like, well, I've been here, done that, it's just harder, I think, sometimes to keep pushing. And if they're going to be doing, because we always hear about it, right? Everybody's, Lucy Charles swimming 25,000 yards a week, and they're going, doing all this shit. And yeah, it can really peak at the right time once. And I think a lot of times maybe that's what they're trying to do, right? Is because you win Kona, and then that really sets off a chain reaction that really takes care of you probably for a while. And I just think sometimes that we get into this, like, just keep doing more and more and more shit, and more, it could be anything, ice baths and massages, and they're just constantly doing triathlon, and their brain is just like, gets broken on, metaphorically speaking, about how to handle these races sometimes, or, their body's just like, enough, man. Can't we just get off this for a minute? I don't know.
I don't think you're wrong. And I know it probably sounds easy, and let's be honest, it is easy to, be armchair quarterbacks and, debriefing by, after the, standing around the water cooler and
I'm just saying, you talked about it, 2 Ironman a year, 3, 4, whatever it become, yeah, you can do it, but like, for how long is the question? Stuff like that.
Oh, I mean, I think you're 100%. And, I think, like, again, like, when you look at the amount of volume that they're, this is very true to me for what you see with age group athletes. And I think it's only been magnified in the last 4 to 5 years. I mean, we see it as coaches, right? Because, pro triathletes have their blogs and their social media and their Strava and their YouTube channels, and it's promote. And, how many followers can I get? And I'll be honest with you, I don't think half the stuff they say is real. I think half of it's just bullshit to get you to watch. But age groupers think it's 100% like truth gold. And the fact is it's just not. And then you also, I think there are so many mind games being played that, as much as you want to think that media, social media, any kind of content in triathlon is different than the rest of the world's content, you're naive, right? The rest of the world's content is based on what? Clicks. How many people can we get to watch? And how do they do that? By being sensational, or saying things, and saying things that are so far one way or so far the other, or ripping one side or whipping the other. It's marketing, right? It's in the desire for total truth is just not there. So to think that triathlon is any different is just, you're being naive. To think that there's not some gamesmanship, if you will, going on between, from what pro triathletes do or say to other pro triathletes. And I think age groupers get caught up with that. And I think now it's like, how fast can we go on the bike to no cost? I'm like, you're seeing, people just get in the amount of volume and work and how much races they do. And now we've gone from, a mediocre, well thought out schedule to a lot of these athletes are, it's funny, right? You look at some of the best performances on the day from the older dudes with reasonable schedules, because they're older, right? And that's how they, I can say that's how they grew up, but that's how they grew up in the sport, right? These are older guys, Lange, Hanson, Barnaby's even, in the thing is mid-30s, and your boy, he's like slipping my.
Ben Hoffman?
Like, totally what his name is. No, not Hoffman.
Hanson?
Wurf.
Wurf,
Wurf, and the amount of stuff that and you look at like their yearly race, and then you look at the other guys, the young guys and Rudy von Berg, he's another incredible example of a reasonable race schedule. Early season, he did Texas, had a really good race, I think, and then had a few things here and there. And you would always hear this like on, back when Crowe and McCormick and even Jan Frodeno, and when he was winning all his races, and Reef, and like, again, like they basically just shut it down from like July to race day, and it's all about the final block. And the young guys, like, it's like, oh, I'm young, I can race as much as I want to, and not feel and not crush myself. Laidlow, it could be argued he lost his race with his race a few weeks before in the T100. And was that really needed? Did you really need that? Yeah, you got to make the dollars. And then you also got to think, half of me was thinking, all right, he probably knew he didn't have the run fitness, and he maybe knew his legs were tired. So his best case scenario for him was to go out and drill the swim and then take the bike course record and take some sponsorship dollars from Canyon, from the new Kona bike course record. But you can't have the bike course record unless you finish. So we had to finish. And so I just think I think there's so many things that are wrong with how age groupers try to emulate what professionals are doing. And whether it's more volume, more intensity, whether it's, the amount of fuel you're trying to take in. Yeah, I would love to see, of all the numbers and data that are going to come out post Kona, watts and CDA and heart rate. Like, I would really love to see Patrick Lange's and like guys like Wurf, like some of the older guys. I would love to see what their fueling was for the day. And if theirs was, on par with these, to me, just asinine numbers of carbohydrates. Because I also think a lot of it's bullshit. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I think some of these guys saying that they're trying to take in 160, 800 carbs an hour is total bullshit for a lot of them. At the rate of speed, at the rate of effort that they're having. I think they're doing it to try to get the other guys to try to do it too. But then in 10 years, they're probably going to be diabetic. But that's, the topic for a different day. So I think there's so much showmanship and gamesmanship going on, especially for the guys that are, under the age of 30. But yeah, and then again, like you have the tried and true method of winning the day in one of the hardest races that you have in the championship day that everyone wants to win. It's swim front pack, bike within the pack, but within yourself, let everyone else blow up and run to the field. And he wasn't the only one that did it. You had Hanson coming in at 10th that did it. Rudy von Berg, he also, I think, to the same degree, had the same type of execution, just not as great a fitness as Lange. He just can't run like Lange can run. If he was just a little bit better run, he would have passed Ditlev too. Ditlev is the only guy that managed, and I'll be honest, I don't know how he held on to second. With how big that dude is, he looked like he was lumbering at like a 9-minute pace out of the gate, but he wasn't, right? It was in the sixes. He's the only one, and to me, which is also interesting when you look at the three guys, right? You had Laidlow win last year, Lange with second, I think, in Nice, and then it was Ditlev in third and Von Berg, and you had the same guys up top this year, except for Laidlow. The same guys, totally different course, which is also, I think, is really interesting when you look at how many guys are loaded. I think people are putting way too much money into bike tech and fairings and all these extra things we can do, and which is, also, like, if you like want to peel back the layers of like how much the bike is significantly faster, aerodynamics. If you took away it's so, again, like and this is probably the old man get off my lawn moment, but I think if you give these guys the same bikes that they were using 15 years ago with the same setup and then back to normal shoes, I don't know that I think times would be that different. You might see a 10 to 12 minute difference in the top times of, again, 10 plus years ago. But if you take away the bike tech and the integration, and especially like the to me, it's not the bike frames, it's the front end integration, like the aero bars and how things are like formed around your forearms now, and then fueling and stuff is all in the bike. And then you take away super shoes. I don't see that much difference in the time. And which again begs the question, right? Is like, what are we focusing on and investing in things that aren't necessarily going to give us the best return on investment? So I mean, again, it's all hindsight, but still, I think it's an interesting topic. Like when you look at, even the hours that you can get in and be successful in, like when you look at, age group athletes and how there's just to a point in life where more is not the answer. It's just doing less and doing it correctly more often. That's going to give you the best shot. And I think the best opportunity to have success in race day. But every athlete, and this, and I know this as a coach, like I don't think I've ever gotten a request to do less. Hey man, if we did a little bit less intensity, coach, and I think if we reduced the volume a little bit, I think I'd have like a giant breakthrough. Never. Like the coach has to bring that up. The coach has to do that. But with the athlete, it's always, I think if we could squeeze in a few more hours and more intensity, I think that's where we can get, and these are age group athletes with real jobs, families, kids, responsibilities, life stresses. These aren't professionals, right? Who have like personal, physios and massage therapists and, are like, they take, 2 naps a day. They sleep until 9 a.m. Like, but yet age groupers try to emulate them. And so I think it's interesting, like that if, maybe some, not all, but, maybe a pro here or there would do less. And which is also why I think you see some high level pros do so well that still have like, look at Matthew Marquardt. He's still like in med school or something like that, like working like a full-time job. So sometimes I think it's these athletes and you see sometimes when they have kids and get married and they have less time, they have like these breakthroughs. And to me, sometimes it's like, cause the ability to do more has been taken away from you. You just don't even have the option where now you have to be just smarter with your training and do less than always trying to add in more, which it's got to be incredibly addictive as a pro to just do more and do more and do more. When, I just got to say, I just don't know that's always the answer.
Well, maybe even as an age grouper, it's addictive to do less. I've had a interesting theory popping around in my brain lately, at least interesting to me. And it goes that I think most of technology is a net loss. So I'm going to take it off triathlon for a minute. So when I was a kid and I used to golf like every day and I play all the time, and, golf's a hard game, and, you had, regular clubs. And then I remember, after about 10 years, I came back into the sport and they had all these, like the drivers were like the size of a bowling ball. And I went out and played with some guys that I knew never played it much when they were growing up, but they could hit this thing like a mile right down the middle. It was just this sort of advancement that it allowed people that weren't that good to be pretty good and give them highlights, and things like that. And, you could say that kind of like you're saying about the technology of a bike or something like that. Once the aero bar came in, that was the answer. And then everything since then has just been tweak. Every year is like different, and it's like, this is the new setup. This is the new setup. This is the new setup. But everybody forgets you got to work your ass off to, make it work. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that sometimes, when the desktop computer was a word processor, that was like awesome, man. And you could write a book and you didn't need whiteout and stuff like that. And now it's like people are just trying to invent shit, and I think that stuff works for a while. I mean, you talk about how pros might say shit that they don't really mean, I think, I do that, here, because you got to fill content, right? So now all of a sudden there's stuff coming out all the time. You got to come up with something, and it's the flavor of the day, and it seems like the thing to go with, and the Norwegian method or whatever it is like that shit works because I think you're fired up about it for a while, and then can you stay with it? It's sort of is it like back in the day when I was growing up, we used to have singles in music, that. And out of that came a term, one hit wonder, and that's like a big trivia thing now. It's like, who did that song? I don't know. They had one hit, and it wasn't like they were in the game for a long time. They weren't making good albums, they weren't making a career out of it. And I think a lot of times that's what happens in sports. It's just sort of somebody pops up for a year and they're just a big hero, and then you never hear about them again or whatever. And now we're back to, singles again. And, there's no real like career-driven bands or anything like that out there now. And I'm not, I'm just pointing out shit. It is what it is, because everything sort of changes all the time. But I just think sometimes, it's like you can have AI write a whole book for you, but that don't mean you're a writer. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you got to work at a craft, or like Instagram took, put a lot of real photographers out of business that actually understand how to develop film and work with, manipulate, stuff like that. And shit's just done for you now. So I think it's easy to kind of lay back and lean on some of these technological pieces that you think are, they seem like they're going to help you, but you still got to put the work in. You got to really learn the craft and understand it and play like Patrick Lange played chess. He gets it. He understands the nuance of the whole thing. And it's not just like shining for one day. I mean, he's been doing it for a long time. And that's sort of how I look at, I've changed my tune on it a little bit. It's just, this is a life game for me. It's part of my life, and I want to keep doing it. So I can't jeopardize that with some crazy shit for like 2 years. It might, take me completely out of here and take me away from fitness and all that sort of stuff. So it's just something I've been thinking about, that long game, and really finding joy in the process and understanding it and really getting a good handle on it. Because like I've said, even as a video editor, there's just programs now that just do shit for you. And then you just start losing the skill.
Yep. Man, there's just, and again, this is like this conversation as a whole is the perfect example of why people love this sport. It's because there's so many different moving parts and different ways to think about it. And you're in a sport that if you want to, kind of like you said, like you can do it for forever if you want, or you can go all in. And I think it really just comes down to, like what is it you want to get out of the sport, and what are you willing to give up, and what do you want to gain, and what are you willing or unwilling to sacrifice, whether it's time or even health. Because I do think to an end, the sport is incredibly healthy. And then once you get to a certain point, it's also not. And that's, and that goes for like both like the mental and emotional and physical toll, like that it can bring so much joy and so much, of a health benefit and, just help you in so many ways in life. But then to another degree, it can become so obsessive and addictive that just like anything else, it can become something that's hurtful, right? Or a overall negative to your life. That's with everything. That's why I think like when we idolize and put, athletes or anyone like on such a pedestal, it opens up opportunity for, to be let down, or for you to get lost in what's really best for you, right? Which is, healthy and being able to do it for a long time, and overall systematic longevity and like a healthy way to live. And again, like there's a lot of healthy things about sport, but there's also a lot of unhealthy things about it. It's interesting how like we go through, in one breath, triathletes can have significant body image problems, right? They don't think that they're at a good overall weight, or the way they look is too heavy, because they see a bunch of athletes that are overly skinny. And then you've got the same breath, like you have a lot of triathletes who their focus is just not gaining weight and being obsessive about being skinny and frail looking. And then you onto this, and it's, which is weird to me, because then now on the same other end of the spectrum, while some sections or percentages of triathletes are obsessed with weight and how we look, you can also be incredibly unhealthy, because then the other end of the spectrum, you're trying to shove 300 grams of sugar down your food hole on an hour and a half bike. And then you're probably going to barely eat the rest of the day. There's so many, like, again, the sport's so crazy, and it's just gotten crazier with bike tech and shoes and nutrition and fueling, and then what you have to listen to or read or watch. It's wild. And that's why I think you'll see more mistakes being made than solutions being found. Because there's so much interference and information out there that it's a lot easier to consume content than it is to individually pursue your own journey and figure out what's best for you. Yeah. Because it's impossible to drown out the noise when all you do is have your headphones on with the music blaring up.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, it's hard to say.
I think it's problematic.
Like Training Peaks, for example, what a great piece of technology. It paired athletes with coaches, and you could lay out workouts, and you can do all this kind of stuff. But like sometimes now it's just, the thing is there. Now it's just like, where do we go from here? Well, let's just, like, you go in there sometimes and there's more shit going on in there, and I don't even know what's going on half the time. And, metrics and shit like that. And it's like, did you do the workout, and how you feel? It's just, sometimes it's really, for me, it just gets overwhelming. And I think a lot of times, whether they're pro triathletes or any athlete that's out there, like, big time on social media, I think that, I just think it puts more pressure on a person, and, because you're just constantly in the face, and then all of a sudden it's like that becomes, gets in your head or whatever. And performance, man, like you're saying, it's like you go dark and you just get in the zone. And if you're really going to be out there doing the best for you, you got to keep focusing on what that is, rather than, it's just like, I just think about that all the time. These, not even triathletes, but just pro athletes that are just so visible on social media, and then they go to the playoff. It's just like the camera's always on, always on, always on. How does that not wear you down? And how does that not, get in your own head sometimes? Sometimes you step up, and a lot of times you don't. And it's just all the hype. There's so much hype, man. I even think about that, with college football. A lot of times they just hype these kids so hard, and then they go out and lay an egg, and then it's like, we just forget about it too. That's, it's sort of a disposable society in that way, where you just, something happens, it's like, next day something else comes up, and you just sort of forget about that. I'm watching on Netflix the Comeback. Have you seen that? Have you watched that? It's about the Boston Red Sox.
I saw a preview for it the other day. Yeah, I want to watch it, because I remember watching it watching it live as it happened.
Yeah, I did too, and it's really interesting to go back and watch it all. It's just, I don't know. It's sort of like, it's really a good story about team and community, and how they just kind of came together to, I guess, break the curse of the Yankees, the great Babe Ruth curse. And they talk a lot about how they just kind of got together, and it's how rare it is, and how that kind of stuff matters, picking the next person up and all that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed it from an inside baseball perspective.
I'll have to watch it. I like stuff like that. But no, as we close, and it's, people always look at Kona to be inspired, right? Or to look at all the cool bikes and everything like that. And what wins the day is execution and doing what you're supposed to do. the rest is just entertainment. And, so when you look at, again, like, your own journey, I always kind of talk about, at least with myself, is like I do my best thinking when I have space, not when I'm bombarded. And that can even be just like the difference in walking, my dog Waffles with music or not music. Because whether you think it or not, the music and what's being played helps drive your thoughts into different directions because of the beat and the words and the tone, if you like it or don't like it. And, again, but if I take a walk with nothing, my brain just like, it's like it does like a full download. You decompress, you think through what went right, what's going well. If you're anxious, why are you anxious? Like all these things, like you can't figure things out unless you have space. And I remember hearing that from, like, as I took like the last 2 days off work, I think it was Dan Lorang, right? Who I was listening to a podcast interview with him a few weeks ago. And he was asking, if you could tell any coach, like what was the best piece of advice you could give them that you wish you knew, back in your whatever early days. And he said, take more quiet time away from the sport, because if you're always in it and that's all you're in, you get lost. And because there's always something, but when you distance yourself from it some and allow things to kind of materialize or germinate and grow and filter through and have ideas come in, like if you can't work through that and figure things out if you don't have the space to comfortably and patiently work through any kind of an item. If you're always bombarded with a text ring or an email or a Training Peaks comment or a iron track going off, or your kid needs something, or you've got a responsibility at home, or the TV comes on, or you got to pick your phone up for no reason because you got to check social media, like all those are ways to interrupt a good flow of just thought and thinking. And I don't think we have enough of that. And that's also why I think it's so hard for athletes to find their right way and their right path in training these days, is because there's just so much noise and no one wants to take the earphones off. They just want to do and get lost in what everyone is doing. And it's harder than ever, I think, in many ways, not just in sport, but in life, to forge your own path and your own destiny, whether it's professionally or in your personal life or in sport, because we're so easily influenced, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. And you got to kind of always ask, is this me? Is this mine? Or is this borrowed and bought? And I think again, I don't have an answer for you because it's incredibly hard, because no matter what we do, from the time you open up your laptop or wake up or open up your eyes and walk through and do things, you're at the mercy in a lot of ways of being influenced. And I think the best way you can go about it is just do your best to be authentic in what you do and what you say and how you train, and then always ask, like, is this for me? And do I have a reason for doing this, or is it something that I'm consuming or trying to apply because I saw someone else? And is that really the way to go?
Yeah, and I can only speak for myself, but when I'm in these situations like that, it's just whether it's music or some kind of pre-gel or what, I'm sort of looking for a distraction or something like that. And I think a lot of times, like I run a lot with music again, and I know that I just enjoy, so it's not like a terrible thing or anything like, but I think the reality is when you're out there on the back of an Ironman course and you don't have that shit, you got to face yourself, man. And if you're not used to it, and there's a lot of shit going on up there, it just it makes it. I just think that makes it a lot harder. So I'm with you, and I totally get it. I just think that there's so many distraction, i.e. drugs, out there for us to try to get away from, like you're saying, that quiet, that place. Can we deal with what's going on up there without all that shit? And I know a lot of people struggle with that. I mean, I do, but it's just interesting, man. But because you can jack yourself up and kind of get through anything, but then can you do it over and over and over? Anyway, that was a good one.
Yeah, we think. We'll see. No answers.
Just what do you mean technology sucks? Come on.
Yeah, it doesn't suck. It's just,
It's
a
just
lot of positives, but when anything has tons of positives, it always comes with the negatives. But that's just the human. That's just the human species doing what we do, which is to take great things and fuck it up, or use it for evil.
Yeah, snowblower's great, but there's nothing that gets you more in touch with life than shoveling snow, man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but not too soon. Not quite yet. December, January. We got Ironman Florida this weekend. Big weekend. Lots going on. Good luck to everybody that's racing. Some of my favorite races. My first Ironman ever done at Ironman Florida. Good God, 20 years ago. Dating myself there. But as always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me specifically, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. Go enjoy the wind.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. Check you tomorrow.
All right. See you.